Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of Made Visible with me, Ankur. In today's episode, we explore aliens and the human soul. How that works is first, are we living in a simulation? That's what George Knapp thinks. Are souls containers? And what's up with Jeremy's eyes? That's something very interesting to watch. Is there a net around Earth that catches souls? Someone seems to think so, and let's see who. And hybrids are real. That's what a congressman thinks. But before we start our episode today, let's check this out. What if the crazy poster boy of 2012-2013 disclosure, Tom DeLonge, had a bunch of tweets that he deleted, but someone took screenshots of, and they read so. To understand what UFOs and their occupants want, you have to follow a linear path. This secret, the alien secret, is worse than World War II, 9/11, and COVID combined. That I've always wondered if it was kept quiet, not from us, but from the others themselves. Yeah, which means that the secret government programs are actually keeping a secret from the others on this planet, not just us. And what if we didn't want them to know that we knew what they were doing? Let's start with our first video today, which is what George Knapp thinks about why we are here and about the human soul. Listen in, guys.
In tune, more connected?
Yeah, I had mentioned before about BICS, the Bigelow organization looking into consciousness studies. One of the things it focuses on is near-death experiences. So people die, they're in a horrible accident, and they're dead, they're physically dead, and it's measurable that they're gone. But they rise, their consciousness, their soul, call it what you want, rises out of the body and sees all that's going on, and then it comes back. There is no way that it should be able to know the things that happen while it's physically dead, 10, 15 minutes or more, but they do. And these are fascinating stories and accounts, well documented, and it suggests that there's a part of us that goes on, that is separate from.
The two things that he talks about is first, Bigelow. That name is very synonymous with UFO research, and that's the case because right now all the big weapons companies and aerospace companies don't give out any information. They do all their research about this subject in secrecy. But Robert Bigelow, who's a billionaire and started his own space research aerospace company, everything that he does in this subject is open. And sometimes at the risk of looking crazy or kook, right? He doesn't care. He goes forward and does these initiatives for human progress with alien knowledge. And he employs some great scientists, publicly known scientists, unlike how a big defense contractor, so you've heard many names like Lockheed Martin, like Northrop, like many others, is they do this research in secrecy. They have labs that are so well protected that even approaching them, you would be under a scanner or multiple scanners. And they have these great scientists that you've never heard of, great minds, but they're plugged out very early on and then led down a path of contracts and skiffs, so to say, where they lose their freedom, but they get to do the research they always dreamt of doing with no limitations on budgets. Now, which life would you take? That's where whistleblowers are born. When there is so much pressure surrounding something that a human mind is no longer able to comprehend the importance or the significance. It just starts to flatten out at some point where it couldn't be that important that the rest of humanity couldn't know. That is where a whistleblower is born. And Lockheed Martin being that type of a company, or any of these big contractors, I don't want to just name one, but any of the, just search for top 10 big contractors in the US, weapons contractors and Air Force contractors. And these people, these companies, they're not like Bigelow, where Bigelow would publicly let it be known what he's buying, what he's doing, and what those scientists are doing. And the scientists also are not very much prohibited from coming into public life and talking about their work a little bit. So Bigelow is a very big name, and a name maybe to look out for, because he's actively spending his money in publicly trying to acquire information and assets very close to this subject. The other thing that he mentions is something called
or more, but they do. And these are fascinating stories and accounts, well documented, and it suggests that there's a part of us that goes on, that is separate from our physical reality, that is in contact with.
Then he talks about this simulation theory, where there is a theory that what VR headsets are to us is what life is to our soul. And each time we live a life, our soul is actually just looking at a simulation and passing through the simulation, taking up all the feelings, absorbing all those feelings, allowing those feelings and feelings of happiness, feelings of sadness to change its core. That is what a soul is doing over here on earth. There are theories that souls that are there from across the universe or across this galaxy are all put on earth and planets like earth, where they grow at a much faster pace, where they metamorphosize and learn, right? So when you say soul purpose, the soul, soul purpose, a sole purpose would be to improve certain aspects of itself before it becomes a part of the whole. And instead of it doing multiple lives in multiple different places, it doing one place, like if it keeps rotating itself here, it can go through multiple different types of realities and simulations and get stronger and get better. Whatever its purpose is, it's able to fulfill it much faster here on Earth. That is why Earth is considered to be also a special planet. These are all again hearsay. This is very far away from the alien topic. Surprising to say that, because now that we have so many disclosures happening with the alien subject, it's really funny when I say that aliens are real and all of this might be just out there. I'm sorry, but it's not. And this is what it's kind of there somewhere on the radar, that souls and soul purposes and rebirth and all of these are real, and how they affect us, what their original purpose is all up in the air. We can only theorize based on the way we are, the way we think, and maybe some sacred texts. These are the only 2 points of reference that we have as people to be able to guess what the soul purpose or the soul by itself is.
A universal consciousness, call it a soul. It gets down to the bottom of what makes us us, you know, and the scientists who think it's just generated by the brain can't really explain why people should still have consciousness when the brain is dead. And there's a lot of cases where that's true.
Well, and
So another thing that he talks about is near-death experiences. He says that people who have near-death experiences go physically, but are there consciously. They're able to see all of the things that happen around them. They're able to remember the names of people. They're able to sometimes remember the faces, but very rarely. So it could also just be the brain showing no signs of activity to our systems, but still being active at some theta, very low level state, and being able to hear its own surroundings and being able to imagine what it's like. But sometimes the details that people who have had these near death experiences, NDEs, they describe some wonderful things. And there is a person who has done a study of almost like he owns a website that where people share their own near-death experiences in detail, and he's gone through thousands of such cases and accounts. And what he has to say is that there is a commonality between each person when they die and when they come back. What is occurring between those moments? So if you really want to go deeper, you should definitely check out near-death experiencers accounts on YouTube, and you will be pleasantly surprised. We think of death as something really difficult and scary and dark, but what they describe is something else altogether, where they don't even want to come back, but they're pushed back, they're forced back to Earth, back to their lives, and they're told that you have a purpose, you have not fulfilled it, so you need to go back and you need to fulfill that purpose. And they start to see the world after they come back as a stage, as something that's a play, and that they just have to enjoy and watch. Let's continue.
That we are both a physical being and a spiritual being, that we have within us that spirit that lives on after this life. Can't be measured. You can't put it on a Geiger counter and see it go beep, 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 but you have these stories.
You know, it was a friend of mine, a co-author. We co-wrote a couple of books. His name is Dr. James Lakatsky, brilliant guy, engineer, who ran the world's largest, or at least the United States research. His latest writings, I'm not part of that, but he suggests UFOs are a tiny subsection of a much bigger mystery. And it's the what we'd call paranormal stuff that's real. And the other things, Bigfoot, ghosts, UFOs, aliens, are all subsets of something much bigger. And until we understand the much bigger picture, we're not going to figure out the rest of those mysteries either.
Yeah, so this James Lakatsky figure is again another very senior scientist who has basically he knows everything. If you were to expect disclosure, if you wanted to know everything about the phenomena, the aliens, and everything else, well, he had access to all the records, and he was tasked with writing almost 12 volumes of his report, which was a condensed, super condensed form of whatever his learnings were over his career inside of secret research inside of the US government. And all of his work is already disappeared as per his claims. But when he says that aliens are just a very tiny subset, considering we already are dealing with many, many more things, which means that these things are there in the radar of the US military. And for the past 40 years, the West, unlike us in India and in Eastern cultures like China and others, the West has always denied that there could be anything paranormal. They denied the fact that there are ghosts or that there are entities, and they've always kept this very stoic approach that science is all prevailing and whatever we can measure is what is real and things like that. But which I think is a big U-turn if you listen to the recent discourse, not just of George Knapp, but multiple different people who are coming from different avenues of the wider community, and they all have the same thing to say, that paranormal is the phenomena, the phenomenon is paranormal, and everything is within that. Another part of this whole something called as the Mandela theory, which is here. Then we can look at some examples of it.
The Mandela effect is when a large number of people have memories of events that don't match reality. This is called the Mandela effect because millions of people specifically remember Nelson Mandela died in prison. He didn't. People remember his wife walking beside his casket in a funeral procession that was on television for 2 hours that day. This never happened. Or the Berenstain Bears, which people insist were always called the Berenstein Bears. People remember the tycoon from Monopoly having a monocle that he never had. What was Darth Vader famous for saying?
Luke, I am your father.
Nope, he never said that.
What?
Right. So I think you get the picture. The Mandela effect is a situation where over time we tend to remember things differently while they actually could have been different. But you would think that it's just common public memory that is slowly faded away. So there are two very big buts over there, the two very big ifs and buts there. One is that there are still people in the public who have very good memory and would miss remember something. And on the other side, you have actual evidence. So here's another reel which shows how the Mandela effect is real and maybe government sponsored, and adds to the simulation theory that we live in a very carefully curated version of reality. What we see in front of our eyes is totally different versus what actually is happening behind the scenes. And maybe there's an entire department inside of the government which is tasked with making us remember things differently for whatever reasons that they may have. Check this out. So we do know the fruit of the loom. I mean, if you didn't, but this is like a innerwear company, and they always had. Even I remember them having a cornucopia. But you'll get this now.
So did you see the lady that actually proved the Mandela effect is a government experiment?
So she was able to prove this.
Yeah, so one of the most popular Mandela effects is the Fruit of the Loom Mandela effect, where everybody remembers there being a cornucopia on the logo of Fruit of the Loom clothing, but apparently there's not. And this lady was super convinced that there used to be a cornucopia on the logo, but Fruit of the Loom came out and said that they've never had a cornucopia, basically just calling this lady crazy. And Fruit of the Loom even has a post of all the past logos they had all the way back to like 1893. And basically they're trying to prove that they've never had a cornucopia on their logo. But then someone came out and they actually have photo proof of this, that they found a piece of clothing in their closet with a cornucopia on the Fruit of the Loom logo. And then after this, people did more digging and they actually found newspaper articles talking about Fruit of the Loom and how there's a cornucopia around it.
Wait,
So here's the most clear example, and there are many such things. We are able to catch some because we have limited memory. We are so busy, or we are kept so busy with our daily lives, that there are maybe hundreds or thousands of things that are just going away and being like re-engineered inside of our memory of the past. And I mean, for what? I really wonder. But yeah, Mandela effect is real, and you can find lots and lots of examples of the Mandela effect if you go online. There is this crazy scientist called Bob Lazar, who in the 80s came up forward saying, I work in Area 51, this desert place where we test forbidden and very secret technologies of alien origin. And he came forward and once told that he was given a book containing so many secrets of religion and so many secrets of how reality is engineered. And one of the secrets that he mentions, reading clearly, is that aliens created souls and they refer to our bodies as containers. So here's a small clip.
Extremely classified document dealing with religion, and it's about that thick. Period. But why would there be any classified material dealing with religion?
I want to go back to the religion thing. I want you to say it.
Oh, come on, that's so weird. That's a lie.
I'm not asking you to say what you believe to be a fact. I'm asking you to say what you read in a report that that is distributed at what may be the most top secret facility in the world. Okay. All right.
All right, I'll say it. It's so far out.
All right. Your objection has been noted.
So this part where you see he was visibly flustered or angry was because he had clearly said that he would not like to go deeper into that, and he was probed. But anyway,
Okay.
What does it say?
That we're containers. That's how supposedly the aliens look at us. That we are nothing but containers.
Containers of.
Containers. Maybe containers of souls. You can come up with whatever theory you want, but we're containers, and that's how we're mentioned in the documents. That religion was specifically created, so we have some rules and regulations for the sole purpose of not damaging the containers.
The souls. Meaning.
Well, the souls or the bodies, or whatever. Right? That's
Meaning like we're containers for souls that they're going to use at some other point.
right.
And that they had something to do with different prophets and biblical figures.
Yes.
What?
Well, that supposedly Jesus and two other two other beings were genetically engineered. They were implanted in people on Earth in biblical times, and their births were closely monitored. Now, just some little connections to that my wife had brought up were in the Bible. They said that the star had followed Mary wherever she went, and that all UFO sightings always start out as people, well, gee, that looks like a bright star, and well, in fact, they said in the Bible, the brightest star in the sky followed her where she went, and it just made little connections like that.
There's a pretty interesting revelation or connection that Mother Mary gave birth to a baby with no father, and she was a virgin, and she saw the brightest star in the sky follow her, and baby that comes out is able to do miracles. Certainly sounds very interesting. But the part where he says that bodies are containers, aren't we all containers? This is just the physical world. In Hinduism, there is this thing of Maya, which is the physical world, which is what you can touch and feel and perceive. But that's not really what the spiritual world is, where your soul resides, the spiritual world. And people say that your physical form is a projection of your spiritual form. This does connect with whatever older scriptures across the world talk about. In addition to this, what Jason Georgiani believes is something more darker, but something also possible, right? So let's watch this.
Did interviews with a lot of experiencers, abductees, who reported the same kinds of things as Robert Monroe did in Far Journeys, where they said that we are in a control system that's being managed from out of a metallic sphere just beyond the Earth. And they describe the inside of this thing.
What?
I think
that Earth is a control system. Let me just repeat that. That is being controlled by a metallic sphere from outside. The metallic sphere.
Going back to our first conversation, what they're describing is the inside of the moon. That there is what we might call, using the Soviet language, a psychotronic control system, a kind of spectral technology inside of the moon, which is impinging on and manipulating humans in the afterlife state.
Just another connection that I did get from here is that you always seen the full moon and the werewolves metamorphosizing from human to a werewolf, the werewolf man, right? The wolf man. That happens on a full moon. That means that when that satellite is pointed at the Earth straight in its full capacity, looking and being able to send its signals out, there is this beast that comes out. It may not be really a wolf, but then maybe this beast comes out. You can also look up something very interesting, is that the maximum number of crimes, violent crimes, happens on full moons. It's like a curve where it goes to the highest during full moon. Crazy, you know.
What?
And it's not omnipotent.
Yeah.
It's not a flawless system. So it's possible to assert your free will and self-determination in the face of this system, but it's very difficult. So a lot of people have had near-death experiences, for example. They describe being pulled toward this light. It's like they couldn't resist going into the light.
Yeah.
They tried in some cases, but it was almost as if it was an electromagnet, like pulling them into it.
Sure.
And then when they go into the light, one of the most common things that's described is that people are shown their dead relatives and religious authority figures, like Jesus. And, or like if you're a Hindu, you see Hindu gods, interestingly. I'll give you a terrifying case from a Hindu in a minute. So you're pulled into this light, and then they show you your dead relatives, and they show you Jesus and whatever. Well, here's the problem, Jesse, is that if you look at Dr. Ian Stevenson's extremely rigorous research on reincarnation that he did at the University of Virginia for decades on children's spontaneous memories of past lives, all the cases show that the average interval between death and reincarnation is something like, it could be anywhere from 6 months to 3 years maximum. It's usually not more than several years. So when you are having a near-death experience and your grandmother, and let's say you're in your 60s in your 60s, and you see your grandmother who died when you were in your 20s, that's bullshit. You are being shown an artificially generated simulacrum of your dead relatives to manipulate you.
If you keep listening to more of this, it just keeps getting harder and harder. His words get longer and longer. What he's coming to essentially say is that when you die, there is a light. And there is this other scientist who's been also one of the first people who came forward and said that the global elites are like lizard people, and aliens have already gotten into the global elites' minds and their bodies, and they're like shape shifting and they control the world by looking like us. So we are the sheep and they are the wolf, but they are in sheep's clothing. And they sheep's clothing literally means like they're like shape shifting and making us believe them and trust them and controlling us that way and take the humanity forward or in a different direction or direction they want. So this David Icke figure has repeatedly said that when you die and when you look like presented with the light which is pulling you towards it, don't look at it. Instead, look into the darkness which surrounds it. And this is considered by him to be a way to escape this control system. That being said, the Sumerians had very detailed texts that were discovered about what they believed about the afterlife. And what they believed is that this afterlife has 7 stages. Each stage is specifically designed to rip your soul of its memory till the 7th stage when your soul has forgotten its past life completely. Each stage has stripped some memory and some color from this existing life till your soul now is ready to take another next form as a fresh life with no memory of its previous life. That being said, there are occasions where people have been reborn and remember very clearly their past life, and they are kind of shocked that why am I a child again? Why is this happening with me? There is this very famous case of an Indian girl. I think this was around independence time, and I think she even met Gandhiji. This was around then, where she was born. By her age of 3 or 4, when she could start speaking, all she was saying was that this is not my house, you are not my parents. And then over a period of maybe a couple of years, they could deduct without technology, but they could deduct based on her accounts where she actually was living in her earlier life. And they called her husband, who was still alive at that time, to meet this little girl. And they could have a conversation, and she could remind him of things that only his wife knew, not this random girl from some other part of the country. So this is a very real phenomena where I don't know how much more evidence you would require to understand that there is this factory. It's either placed by aliens, it's placed by God, it's placed by higher forces, interdimensional beings. I don't know who it's placed by, but it recycles souls. Now, about slightly more human things, there is this whole theory that we were discussing in the last episode, which dealt with alien hybrids, how humans and aliens have been intertwined by either government forces or by aliens themselves. I believe it's a joint effort, because if you know a little bit of what scientists have done during World War II, the kind of very dark research they've done by taking prisoners of war and injecting them with very rampant and prevalent diseases of the time, just to see what happens, Today, the drugs that we take and we take for granted, right? They are the result of the sacrifices of these prisoners of war who were never told what they're being injected with, and were just injected and left to die, observed rather, and left to die. So I totally believe humans are capable of finding alien DNA somewhere and then deciding, hey, let's put it into a human and see how we can create something new. I totally believe there is a section of humans that would do that. That being said, I'm sure aliens also have been doing the same thing, because we did explore in the last episode that aliens have been putting in their DNA into certain bloodlines, and there are more important and obvious works that have explored even deeper connections where the aliens have tried to have human babies using human mothers. So maybe for another episode that we will keep. But for now, let's see this gentleman, Matt Gates.
Worked for the United States Army that was briefing me on the locations of hybrid breeding programs where captured aliens were breeding with humans to create some hybrid race that could engage in intergalactic communication.
Whoa. Gates at
Whoa, into two. You can take my whoa too. So when I heard this, knowing already the kind of information I have about the subject, it was very much on point and shocking that a congressman, he's a congressman, and he's been briefed that there are these programs where aliens and humans are being bred into creating new species that can communicate intergalactically. Aliens are known to have this ability. So there is this Whitley Strieber, author, who claims that he has contact with aliens at this present moment and that he speaks to them on a daily basis. You'll see interviews of him where he is saying, I just spoke to the tall gray guys 3 days ago, 2 days ago. They were in my room. This bruise is because of them, and things like that, crazy things like that. And what he says, very close spectrum with whatever they are trying to achieve with these breeding programs, because all the aliens have the ability, they don't have a voice, they only have the ability to speak telepathically, they have the ability to transmit and hear thoughts. That's why every alien interaction is mostly just a voice in your head knowing that it's not you but the alien in front of you, where you'd not really see an alien, but suddenly you would be communicating with an intelligence using patterns and symbols and pattern recognition, which is for another episode, surely. This is a very deep subject, but a congressman coming out, right, and saying something like this in an interview is super crazy. It's wild times. It's really wild times. And finally, his name is Jeremy Corbell. He is the poster boy of disclosure at the moment, along with Steven Spielberg in the media realm. But if you see this video, maybe I'll show you 5 second clip. I have this theory that he is currently in a lot of distress. I'm not really sure, and I hope you're fine, Jeremy. But this is an interview of him with TMZ, and this is like a few weeks ago, maybe 3-4 weeks ago. And just look at his eyes, and so bright and happy, right?
Born out of this frustration that the government wasn't.
And then you look at him in Area 52, and you see he's wearing these glasses during the podcast. That's very unnatural of him. He'd never really do that at the risk of looking like a prick. He does, though. He wears, and this is the part which I really.
I'm gonna risk a Bob Lazar migraine by taking my glasses off.
I'm going to risk a migraine by taking my glasses off. This was probably because he was hungover, is what I'm thinking. But then you have this face, this versus this, where he is
releasing
like he's really strong here right now and not stressed. This is the face of someone who's not really under any stress or not under that much stress. But then this face, yeah, it's either he's really tired or something's up.
And whistleblowers have done told you. So now it's time to catch up.
You say that the
Look
communication.
at that face. Look at that face. He's either really irritated, he's really fed up, or he's scared for his life. Something's up. This is just 6 days ago. And he really looks like someone put a massive bucket of water on his face. Completely subdued. I hope not. And I hope he has the fight in him, because we really need him. And we really need this disclosure to happen. Anyway, this has been my time. See you. Bye-bye.